In the shadow-draped world of crimson dawn, ancient powers awaken and the fate of the outpost hangs in the balance. As the mysterious winter reveals his true intentions, a primal alpha calls the Lycan pack to a destiny they cannot escape. Elder and Serana will in dark necromancy unleash a new legion of undead warriors. With alliances tested and loyalties torn, the outpost must face the ultimate enemy in a battle that could forever alter the fabric of their world. Who will emerge victorious in this clash of ancient curses and modern survival? Dive into the thrilling continuation where every heart-pounding moment promises to keep you on the edge of your seat. Are you ready for the hunt? Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Winter. Under the grey sky, the figure in the chrome mask introduced himself, with a voice as cold as his namesake. "I am Winter," he said, his tone flat and unyielding. Marco, Nina, and Rachel stood before him, uncertain yet desperate for any lead that could help their cause. "You are searching for something?" Winter inquired, his head tilting slightly, reflecting the sparse light of his mask. "Yes, we are looking for a camp where vampires protect humans and possess some type of weapon to stop the undead," Marco replied, his voice filled with a mixture of hope and weariness. Winter studied the trio, his gaze obscured by the reflective mask. "Maybe I could help you, but I want something in return," he proposed, his voice betraying no emotion. "If we can help you, we'd be glad to," Nina responded quickly, her eyes darting between Winter and her companions, trying to gauge his intentions. "I seek Lycan, werewolves. If you have seen any and know their location, I may help you," Winter stated plainly. Marco exchanged a hesitant look with Nina, questioning whether they should divulge information about their allies to this mysterious stranger. After a moment of contemplative silence, Marco weighed his answer carefully. "Back at our camp, there are 10 Lycan. They aid our camp, but the undead there are too many and vampires control them," he revealed, his voice a mix of resignation and strategic calculation. "Indeed," Winter murmured, seemingly pleased with the information. "The camp you seek is miles from here. On foot, it will take months to get there, if you even make it. These lands are treacherous and fraught with danger." "Then we'd better make a start," Marco said determinedly, his resolve hardening. Marco turned to Winter, curiosity piqued. "Did you hear of a weapon? One that can stop the undead for miles?" Winter looked at Marco, and an awkward silence hung between them. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally spoke. "Yes, such a weapon does exist, but it is not in that camp." "You have seen such a weapon? Where could we find it?" Nina interjected, her interest piqued. "That weapon will be of no use to you. Forget about it. Return to your camp, aid them. The weapon you seek cannot be found," Winter concluded cryptically, turning his back on them and concluding the conversation and their brief alliance. With few options left, the trio turned and headed in the direction Winter had indicated for the camp. As they walked away, each was lost in thought, pondering Winter's mysterious warnings and the arduous journey ahead. The path was uncertain, and Winter's words echoed ominously in their minds, but the need to find safety and strength drove them forward into the unknown. In the hushed calm of a secluded wooded area, Winter approached a small cave concealed within the rocks. Before entering, he issued a slight whistle, a pre-arranged signal known only to those within. From the depths of the cave, a deep, guttural growl emanated, stirring the quiet forest air. Unperturbed, Winter stepped into the shadowy entrance. "Good news, my friend," Winter announced as his eyes adjusted to the darkness. "We have found your kin, you shall be Alpha again." Two primal red eyes glowed in response, reflecting a fierce and wild intelligence not often seen. Back at the outpost, the tension was palpable as the remaining Lycan and human defenders worked tirelessly to bolster their defenses against an imminent attack from the undead and the two elder vampires, Eldur and Serana. Lucan, though still injured and unable to fight, issued commands from a makeshift command center. Samantha, Captain Harris, and Commander Lewis coordinated the outpost defenses, reinforcing barricades and strategizing the best use of their limited resources. Meanwhile, at Fort Eldur and Serana delved deeper into the dark arts of necromancy. They had begun to master the creation of undead warriors, with enough intelligence to wield weapons as well as any soldier. These new warriors practiced their fighting skills under the watchful eyes of their creators, who observed with a mixture of pride and anticipation. "Soon, we will be strong enough to take that pathetic outpost," Eldur declared confidently to Serana as they watched their undead army train, "and put an end to those mongrel Lycan. They cannot stand against us. They are not true blood, and are but shadows of true Lycan," he added scornfully. Serana laughed, her voice echoing chillingly off the stone walls of Fort Eldur. She reveled in the thought of their upcoming victory, imagining the outpost falling before their enhanced forces. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across both the outpost and Fort Eldur, preparations continued on both sides. The defenders of the outpost checked their weapons and fortified their positions, knowing that the battle to come would be a test of everything they had built and believed in. Meanwhile, Eldur and Serana finalized their plans for the assault, confident in the power they had amassed and eager to demonstrate their dominance over what they viewed as lesser beings. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of all involved, with each side believing in their eventual triumph but haunted by the possible consequences of failure. In the dimly lit confines of Fort Eldur and Serana plotted with cold, cruel precision. "I want them to suffer before we kill them," Serana hissed, the memory of the Lycan's scratch still burning in her mind. "They will, my dear," Eldur reassured her with a wicked grin. "I want them to see how helpless their cause is, how hopeless the chances of survival. I want them to beg me for their lives." "Let's send a group of our best warriors to their camp, along with a few hundred undead. A small taste of what we can do," Eldur suggested, savoring the thought of their despair. "Yes, when they see what a small number can do, they will beg us to end it for them," laughed Serana. Following their sinister conversation, Eldur and Serana dispatched a small unit of their trained undead fighters to advance on the outpost, accompanied by around 300 regular undead. This force was but a fraction of what they controlled, yet formidable enough to test the outpost's defenses. Later that day, a guard at the outpost sounded the alarm. "Over there! A number of undead march this way!" he shouted. Instantly, the outpost sprang into action. The remaining wolf pack readied themselves, their senses heightened, while the guards with spears prepared to defend the walls. Captain Harris surveyed the advancing horde with a practiced eye. "There's not that many of them, but those undead in the front, are they marching in unison?" he questioned aloud, a hint of disbelief in his voice. Commander Lewis added, "They look organized." Lucan, still weak but strategically minded, confirmed, "Yes, similar to the ones we fought before. They were trained in combat and wielded weapons." "Unbelievable," muttered Captain Harris, realizing the threat was more serious than he had initially thought. As the undead reached the outpost, the battle erupted. The trained undead, though just a handful, demonstrated chilling efficiency. They moved with a lethal coordination that was unsettlingly human. The outpost defenders fought bravely, but the intensity and skill of the undead warriors took a toll. During the fierce skirmish, another Lycan was gravely wounded, and several camp defenders fell defending the walls. Captain Harris, observing the battle from a strategic vantage point, felt a cold shiver down his spine. Had there been more of them, I doubt we'd have survived, he admitted grimly, acknowledging the skill and ferocity of their foes. Just as the dust began to settle and the outpost caught its breath, another guard shouted from the lookout point, "More incoming!" Grabbing the binoculars, Captain Harris peered through them and saw a horrifying sight. Hundreds of the trained undead, far more than the first wave, marching systematically towards them. A sinking feeling overwhelmed everyone at the camp. The grim realization that they might not win against such overwhelming odds cast a shadow over the outpost. As fear and resolve mingled in the hearts of the outpost defenders, they prepared for what might be their last stand, knowing full well that the true test of their courage and unity was just beginning. The undead army halted in the distance, an eerie and silent tableau that seemed almost to mock the outpost with its sheer presence. From their vantage at Fort Eldur, Eldur and Sarana watched with dark amusement. Sarana, her eyes gleaming with malice, turned to Eldur. "Can I go?" she asked with a twisted smile. "Oh, okay then," Eldur replied, the corners of his mouth twitching upwards in anticipation. Moments later, emerging from the shadows at the front gate of the outpost, Sarana appeared, holding a white cloth aloft, a traditional symbol of truce, though her intentions were anything but peaceful. "Hello," she called out in a voice that echoed off the outpost walls. Captain Harris and Lucan appeared on the wall, faces set in grim lines. "I have a proposition," Sarana announced. Her tone was casual, as if discussing something trivial. "March everyone out here now. Eldur and I will make it quick for you all, and you will not have to face that over there," she said, gesturing nonchalantly to the massive army of undead looming in the distance. "It will be painless, but I cannot say the same for our warriors," she added, with a sinister smirk. As Captain Harris opened his mouth to respond, Sarana cut him off. "Oh, I don't expect an answer straight away. We'll give you 3 days, then I'll come back to feast or watch you suffer. Neither really matters to me," she declared coldly. With that, she disappeared into the shadows as swiftly as she had arrived. Reappearing by Eldur's side back at Fort Eldur, Sarana chuckled. "You should have seen their faces. They looked like death," she recounted gleefully. Both burst into laughter, their cruel joy echoing ominously around them. As the days passed, the looming threat of the undead army remained posed in the distance, a constant and harrowing reminder of the promised assault. The inhabitants of the outpost could see the undead, day and night, causing a pervasive fear of defeat that hung over the camp like a pall. Many were on the brink of giving up, overwhelmed by the prospect of such an overpowering force. Yet, Captain Harris and Commander Lewis refused to let morale falter completely. They gave motivating speeches, trying to rally the spirit of every man, woman, and Lycan within the outpost. They spoke of courage, of defiance, and the importance of standing together in the face of insurmountable odds. Even though deep down, every inhabitant knew the grim reality. They were likely facing an unwinnable battle. Their leaders' words spurred them on. In the quiet moments between speeches and planning, small acts of kindness and shared resolve wove the outpost community tighter together. They prepared as best they could, ready to fight, not just for survival, but for each other, holding on to hope even when it seemed there was none left. The final day arrived with a palpable tension that could be cut with a knife. Serana appeared once again at the gates of the outpost, her presence commanding and ominous. "What say you then?" she shouted across the divide. "Do I get to feed on your souls or not?" Captain Harris, standing atop the ramparts, shouted back with defiant resolve, borrowing a historic quote to fuel his challenge. "Come and take them!" The outpost readied for battle, the air thick with determination and fear. Serana smiled wickedly. "Oh, this will be good," she taunted as she vanished into the shadows. Moments later, the earth shook as the army of the undead began to march forward towards the outpost. The sound of their approach was deafening, the menacing clatter of weapons and the relentless footsteps creating a chorus of doom. As the undead army was halfway to the outpost, a white Honda Fit rolled up outside the camp, sputtering as it ran on the remaining fumes in its fuel tank. A man exited the vehicle, his identity obscured by a chrome mask. He shouted at the front of the gate, "You have Lycan here!" But his voice was nearly drowned out by the overwhelming noise of the marching undead. "Oh, how bothersome," Winter said with a hint of irritation. With a casual wave of his hand, the entire undead army stopped, rendered motionless as if frozen in time. The sudden silence was eerie. "That's better." I said, "Do you have Lycan here?" he repeated. Inside Fort Elder, Elder and Serana were stunned. They focused all their energy and power to regain control of the undead, but it was as if their connection had been severed. At the outpost gate, Captain Harris spoke up. "Who are you? Did you do that?" Yes. Do you have Lycan here?" Winter asked again, his tone impatient. Lucan stepped out from behind the gate, revealing his robust form. "Yes, I am one. We have 8 others, some wounded," he announced. "Excellent," Winter replied. "I'll need you to come with me, immediately." "We cannot leave. We stand with our friends here to fight side by side," Lucan declared, his voice resolute. Winter laughed, amused by the turn of events. "Forget this petty battle. Prepare to leave immediately," he insisted. "Also, I'll need some fuel for this car." "We will not abandon our friends," Lucan countered firmly. Winter turned to look at the motionless army of undead. "Okay. Who commands this army?" he asked, more to himself than anyone else. Captain Harris explained the situation, his voice filled with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "I have no wish to enter your fray on either side, but I need the help of the Lycans. Immediately," Winter stated pragmatically. "Give me some fuel, and I'll go speak with this vampire of yours," he commanded, indicating a temporary truce might be in their mutual interest. The outpost was left in a precarious balance, weighing the potential benefits of cooperating with this mysterious figure against the backdrop of an imminent undead assault, driven by the dark will of Elder and Serana. As Winter drove up to Fort Elder, a curious phenomenon unfolded before him. Any undead in his path froze in time, as if someone had simply switched them off. With an air of casual authority, he walked into the fort, undeterred by the eerie stillness that surrounded him. "Elders, I will speak with you," Winter announced, his voice carrying through the silent fort. Elder and Serana appeared from the shadows, their expressions a mix of curiosity and wariness. "Ah, I have a predicament," Winter began, addressing them directly. "I need to take the Lycan away from here immediately, but it seems your assault on that outpost is keeping them there through some type of bond or sense of duty. You must stop your assault and leave them alone so they can come with me," he stated, his tone commanding. Elder bared his teeth in a snarl. I will end you right here, human, for speaking to your superior in such a manner, he threatened, his voice dripping with disdain. Winter sighed. Why is it always violence with your kind? Is it any wonder why Varric and his elders are dead? He retorted, his remark striking a nerve. Elder's eyes widened slightly. You knew Varric? He asked, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Yes, he was as naive as you. Now stop attacking this outpost immediately, Winter demanded. Enraged, Elder shifted into his shadow form, ready to launch an attack. Always violence, Winter remarked calmly as he pulled an odd-looking device from his pocket. He flicked it on, and it radiated with infrared and ultraviolet light, stopping Elder in his tracks. Elder recoiled in agony as the light bathed him. A simple device, one that emits infrared and ultraviolet light, which are portions of the electromagnetic spectrum, which just so happens to be a specialty of mine. Winter mused. Look, I am not interested in your petty battle. Let me take the Lycan, then kill them all if you wish. It matters not to me. But one way or another, I'm taking the Lycan, with or without your cooperation. Elder and Serana, realizing they were outmatched, not only in terms of power, but in intellect, conceded. Take them then? They are but mongrels anyway. We will deal with the outpost when you are gone, Elder said, his voice laced with resentment, but also resignation. Excellent, said Winter, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. You see, logic over force, he added. With that, Winter simply walked out of Fort Elder as if the meeting had been trivial, treating the Elder beings as mere insects he had agreed not to step on that day. His departure had left a chilling silence in its wake, a testament to the power shift that had just occurred. Winter returned to the outpost with a commanding presence, addressing the Lycan without hesitation. So, prepare to leave immediately, he announced firmly. The Elders have agreed to stop attacking you, so there's no fight for you here. Who are you? Commander Harris interjected, his tone a mix of curiosity and defiance. I am Winter, and I will not waste any more time. I have stopped the destruction of your outpost, Winter replied. In the distance, the undead army was seen marching back towards Fort Elder, a silent testament to his influence. The agreement on my end is fulfilled, Winter added confidently. We did not say we would go with you, Lucan countered, his voice steady but filled with a hint of uncertainty. Winter, his expression hidden behind the chrome mask, paused for a moment, the air heavy with tension. Disappointing, he remarked coolly. If you will not come to him, then he will come to you, he warned. I had hoped logic would have prevailed over your impulses, but I should imagine the parts of your brain are affected by this Lycan curse, particularly your prefrontal cortex. I imagine impulse control and decision-making are difficult for you. With that, Winter turned and left the outpost. His departure left a silence in its wake, as profound and unsettling as the words he had spoken. The sight of the undead army retreating back to Fort Elder brought a temporary relief, but Winter's involvement signaled a change in the dynamics of power and threat. The outpost leaders gathered quickly after Winter's departure, their faces etched with concern and contemplation. Commander Harris, Lucan, and the others knew something significant was about to unfold. The immediate threat of the undead army had been abated, but Winter's words suggested that this respite might be short-lived. Whatever this Winter wants with the Lycan, it's bigger than just our fight here. Lucan mused aloud, his instincts as a leader and protector of his pack coming to the fore. We need to be prepared for whatever comes next, Commander Harris declared, the weight of leadership pressing upon him more than ever. This Winter stopped the undead, but at what cost? And what does he truly want? As the leaders of the outpost deliberated their next steps, the relief of the undead's retreat was tempered by the uncertainty of future challenges. Winter's mention of someone coming to them if they did not follow implied a looming threat that could not be ignored. The outpost had to regroup and strengthen not just their defenses, but also their alliances. The battle might have been halted, but the war was far from over. Sarah was deep in slumber, catching a rare moment of much-needed rest after the relentless stress of the past few days. In her dreams, she was running with the pack, her senses heightened and alive with the familiar thrill of the hunt. But suddenly, everything stopped. The entire pack halted, their attention riveted on a lone figure standing in the distance. It was an ancient, primal being, its call irresistible, pulling at the very core of their beings. As she drew closer in her dream, Sarah could only make out two red eyes burning with a primitive, primal rage. The call was too strong, and in her dream, she found herself unable to resist moving towards it. She awoke with a start, her heart pounding. Almost immediately, other members of the wolf pack burst into the room, each explaining breathlessly that they had experienced the same dream. Lucan, with a grave expression, spoke up. "He's coming. The Alpha. I don't know if we can continue to resist his call if he has grown stronger." Meanwhile, Winter had set up a small camp not far from the outpost, his demeanor one of expectation, as if waiting for someone or something significant to arrive. Back in Fort Elder, Elder and Sarana discussed the recent developments. "He has gone, but he did not take the Lycan. Maybe they refused him," Elder pondered aloud. "And yet, they still live," Sarana added thoughtfully. "This Winter is too powerful and does not seem to take to not get in his way. We need to tread carefully," she advised, her tone laced with caution and a hint of fear. In the deep, frozen woods, the sound of a large creature running on all fours cut through the silence. Deep, heavy breaths echoed between the trees, sending small animals scurrying for cover. Nothing stood in its path as it made its relentless way towards the outpost. Who was this creature? Who was Winter waiting for? And would Elder and Sarana decide to attack the outpost now that Winter had seemingly left the field? Find out in Crimson Dawn Series 2, Episode 5, coming soon.